Yeah, thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for yet another edition of the Tax Talk with Charles. Today is another day. Today is another bright day. I'm excited for all of you who have been following us, who've been commenting on our programs, who've been visiting our sites to see what we're talking about. Here we talk about issues that affect you, that affect us. We talk about anything that affects your dream. When you sleep, you dream of something. You dream of an estate. You dream of a legacy. And that is what we talk about. We talk about all these things. And as part of this program, again, if you're not yet following us or subscribe to the program, please, you just want to do that because we have a lot of interesting programs lined up for you. And we bring you some of the experts that will add value to you all the time. So please, if you're looking at the program for your first time, if you're here for your first time, please just go ahead and click the like button and also subscribe to our channel. And please share this program as we go along because so many people are needing this information within our communities and they just don't know how to get it or how to structure it. So today we're talking about something that it's been a trend. It's a trend in our society. When we talk about tax strategy, we're talking about all these great things that you can do to reduce your tax bill. And today I'm going to talk about credits. We're talking about credits. What's the difference? Most people will ask me, what's the difference between credits and deductions? I mean, credits are incredible. Why are they incredible? Because it's a dollar for dollar deduction on whatever tax bill you have. So if you had a choice between a tax credit and a tax deduction, you will always go for the credit. Why? Because the credit will reduce your tax bill dollar for dollar. Deductions are great, but what do deductions do? Deductions are only reductions to your taxable income. So they will save you taxes in proportion to your effective tax rate. Whereas the tax credit are going to reduce the taxes dollar for dollar. So that's a very important distinction. Today we're talking about energy credits. Why are we talking about energy credits? Because this is the trend. This is what is out there. When we look at the future, everything is about renewable energy. We talk about renewables all the time, but we have never really sat down to look at how does this impact my day-to-day living? What are those things that I can do to take advantage of all these tax codes that are all there in the codes that are there to save me money? How can I take advantage of them? And most of these things are there. Not only do they save you in taxes, they basically add the value of your assets. When we think about wealth, we're thinking of net assets. Anything that can add to your net asset is important. Anything that can reduce your expenses is important. That's why we're focused on trying to make you pay just your fair share of taxes or even avoid taxes altogether. Remember, the top 1% in America, they don't pay any taxes. I could talk for a day on end on this matter. But today we want to talk about these credits. And I have somebody here who is a specialist, who's been dealing with this for a long time. And he's going to tell us today, especially, he's going to be talking to us about solar. Solar credits are huge. They are out there. They are part of the big chunk of tax strategies, of tax credits that you get. And today I am inviting Brad. Brad Ferrer is somebody I work with. He works with us, and he's going to be talking to us about this. So, Brad, welcome to the program, and thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Charles. Glad to be
Yes.
here.
Excellent, excellent. Brad, let's go straight into the matter. We hear a lot about all these things, but before I really start there, who is Brad Ferrer? Tell us about Brad.
Yeah, so thanks. So I've been in renewable energies for several years now. I've had my own business that's dealt with real estate, tax credits, things like that for the better part of a decade now. I live in Houston and work here with a company called Pure, which is been in business for a decade.
Okay.
We work on the residential side, the commercial side. We deal with everything related to solar renewable energy.
Excellent, excellent. And I can add, Brad is an excellent. I mean, he's done a lot of things with us, and he's going to do a lot of things with you guys. So, today, Brad, we're focusing on solar. Tell us a little bit about these things. We hear a lot of things about solar credits. Tell us about it. What are these credits?
Yeah, so you'll oftentimes, especially if you live anywhere near a metro area, you'll get a lot of people that'll come knock on your door and talk about solar. Problem is that has nothing to do with what we're talking about. And the reason
Okay.
why is because these kind of people are usually just targeting homeowners or W-2 employees, people that don't have a business, that haven't thought about their tax strategies or their wealth strategies. Because of that, the numbers and the credits available for just having a house aren't really that good. Back in 2022, with the passage of the Inflation Reduction Act, there were a lot more credits created for businesses to take advantage with respect to renewable energies. Solar is just one of the renewable energies, but that's the one that's usually most accessible to homeowners and business owners because everybody has a roof, right?
Yeah.
With the passage of the Inflation Reduction Act, what they did is they increased the credit to a base 30%, but then they also added on top 10% bonus credits that you can only get access to if you own a business and based on where your home or business is located. It's strictly geography based. There's other things that are associated with that. There's actually grants as well, which we can talk about later, but that's the basics of it.
Yeah, but let's talk about that first thing you talked about there. I know that when I get renewable on my house, when I place a solar panel on my house, I get a 30% tax credit. You just said something about added some tents. Tell us about that. That's very important. Yes, talk to us about that.
Yes. So they added 3 additional bonus tax credits only for businesses. The first one's called domestic content. What that means is that a certain percentage of the aluminum and the steel used in the actual building of the project is sourced from the United States. I'll be honest with you, there's not a lot of that yet. A lot of it is moving back because of these incentives and because of some tariffs and other things like that overseas. A lot of it's coming back, but that'll be more online towards the end of this year and beginning of next year. Number 2 is called a low income community credit. Now, if you qualify for this doesn't mean that you are low income. It just means you live in an area where the median income is at a certain point. That gets you another 10% bonus credit. And thirdly, they have what's called an energy community credit. This one's a little tricky, but basically what it comes down to is if you live within a certain number of miles from a coal plant that was shut down or a metropolitan statistical area, a city that was involved in oil and gas, you're going to automatically get another 10% credit for your business without asking any questions.
That is great. So basically, those that have been able to use, especially the low income one, we get a lot. And most people think that when you say low income, it's basically for the low income area. But what we have realized, you and I, is that we work with a lot of physicians, and most of these people live in very high income areas. But many of them, about 90 of those we've looked at, they all qualify. So what is that notion of low income in this thing? Is there really low income in there?
Really, it just comes down to a map that the federal government made, and I can't give you much rhyme or reason for exactly why the map is cut out in certain places, but as long as you live where the government says, then you get to take that credit. It doesn't mean that your neighborhood is good or bad. I've seen neighborhoods that have $20-30 million homes in them that are still considered to be in a low income area. It's just how the federal government has decided to set it up.
So with you, how do I get to know where my property is located? How do you go about identifying individuals who meet this criteria? Do you have a basis? Do you have something that you can make me know which property qualifies?
Yeah, it's actually super simple. There for each one of these bonus 10%, well, for 2 of the bonus 10% credits, the low income and the energy community, the federal government actually has created a map that it's interactive. You can look up your address and you can see if you're actually located in that area. So you don't have to take our word for it. You can literally go and look on the government website. And if your home is located in one of those areas, you automatically are eligible for that credit.
That's amazing. So basically, if I meet all these criteria, if you add them together, there is 30, there is about, so I get about, if we add all these, let's say I met all of those, that's about 60% of credit that I get for installing a panel on my home. If I bought a panel for 100,000, let's say $100,000, I could basically have tax credit for $60,000. Is that correct?
That's right. That's correct.
And then what about this? I also know that there are also deductions that are associated to these credits as well. Do you want to expatiate on that as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So outside of just the federal tax credits, there's two other sources of credit that you get for solar. There's state incentives, number one, which a lot of states have those, especially in the Northeast, like New Jersey, New York. They have what's called SRECs, which solar renewable energy certificates, which also, it just depends on your state what exactly happens, but you get a lot of benefit from that as well, because it's just a direct payment to you from your state for getting solar.
That is perfect. So the 60% that we just talked about, depending on if you qualify, it goes from 30 right to 60% of credit. That is just for federal. Is that correct?
hmm That's correct.
Okay.
That's just for federal. The state incentives would be on top of that, and they can either come from your state, you can sell them on the market. That's why you need to work with a specialist that can actually go to the market and sell those on your behalf, because that's just money in your pocket that you get through your state. The last source of credit of tax savings that you get are from these deductions. So because of the 2017 Trump tax law, what happened was this thing called bonus depreciation was instituted, which means that as long as the asset belongs to a business, in 2024, you're going to get 60% that you can write off of the value of the asset in year one. So obviously that's going to get affected by your tax rate, but that's still a lot. If you had that $100,000 project, you'd have to decrease it a little bit because of the credit, but you'd get like about an extra $60,000 of lowering in your income.
And this is important. We all know that, and this is very important. What Brad is talking about is we know that currently this started off in 2022. In 2022, the bonus depreciation up to 2022 it was 100%. In 2023, it went down to 80%. In 2024, bonus depreciation on any asset that you have meeting certain criteria, it goes down to 60%. However, and this is very important. This is important because there's an amendment that's currently sitting in the Senate that has already been approved by the House. We thought that it was already going to be approved by now, but it's sitting in the Senate, and if they approve it, which is kind of 90% certain because there's really no disagreement around it, and it went through Congress at about 80-90% approval. Once that is approved, it's going to take bonus depreciation back 100%, and that's going to be retroactive back to 2023. So that's very important. What does this mean? This means that for that same solar panel that you bought for $100,000 and placed on your roof, you now are able to write off the entire $100,000 as a write-off. In addition to all those credits that we just said, you're getting an additional deduction of the entire number. And not only are you getting that deduction, so assuming you are like many of these people we're talking to you, let's say you are in the 30% tax bracket, you just saved yourself an additional $30,000 in taxes. So what does that mean? That means that if all those three were put together, you were putting 100,000. And remember, and this is something I'm going to ask you. It's 100,000 worth of acquisition, and you could write off basically $90,000 in taxes as a result of that. Am I correct in that?
Yep, that's right. There's a couple little rules around it, like you have to lower the amount by half of the credit, but the net effect, you're right, is about 90% of the cost can come from tax savings that you got from Uncle Sam. So if it's a $100,000 system you're putting up, you'll have about $90,000 of tax savings if you can qualify for all of these credits and the depreciation.
Now, hold on a little bit, Brad, because this seems all like everything sounds so great. What's the catch? What should I be looking out for when I think about this? Because I know there's something somewhere. What is that thing that I should be looking out for when I think about installing solar energy in my property?
There's two things. Number one, you need a team. You can't do it yourself. This involves technical know-how and tax know-how. You have to be able to navigate that, get the correct forms filled out, make sure that you're doing it the correct way in order to actually qualify to get these. If you don't do that correctly, you're going to get rid of a lot of the benefits that you could have. Number two, usually people opt to finance a project like this just because it is a larger project. It's the same as getting a business loan or getting a loan for a truck or for a piece of heavy machinery or for an MRI scanner. It's the same thing. You're getting a loan for a business asset. Because of that, you might have associated interest with the loan. But also, Charles, here's the cool thing. Because it's a business loan, you can actually deduct the interest. So it does raise the price of having to get it because you are paying interest for it, but you can write that off as well. well. Not only that, but when it comes to something like this, you need to be working with an established company that has a reputation. Way too much, and the part of the reason that the solar industry has, I would say, a bad reputation is because there's a lot of bad players in the market that they'll start a company, they'll go out of business in a year or two, and then all of the clients that they had served are left high and dry. You need to work with someone who's been around.
That's very important because those are some of the concerns that people have. People will ask this question about, they want to know who is the right, because we have a lot of these people who come and knock our doors and then they are talking about companies that are doing, they can help you with A, B, C, D, E. So you are saying that when these guys knock my door, I just don't want to start doing business with them. I want to look at the reputation of the company, because if that company goes out of business, my solar is also becomes gone, also goes away, right?
Well, it doesn't go away, but if something were ever to happen to that, it's going to be almost impossible to get any sort of warranty claim taken care of because their business is gone. So that's why you need to make sure you're working with someone who's not going anywhere and can actually help you. In addition to that, a lot of the people that'll come by and knock on your door, they're young kids, they're hustling hard, they're working hard, but they don't know what's involved with the business side of things. They've only been trained to talk to the W-2 employee with the base credits, and that's all they know about. They don't know anything about the additional bonus credits, depreciation, deductions. They don't know anything about that. So they're really not in a spot to best serve those who do have a business.
Very important. So you were saying that in addition to, you have clarified this role about getting the right people. You want people who understand what you can get, because 90% of the time, most people who get credits, who get solar panels on their homes, all they know is that they are going to get a write-off of the 30%. That's the 30% they know. They don't know any of these other additional credits and even deductions, because the person who actually sold it to them has no clue about what's going on in the tax code. Is that correct?
That's absolutely right. I've run into quite a few business owners just through my own network and through my friendships that they have solar, and that's exactly what happened. They only got the 30% tax credit because that's all the person that sold it to them was aware of. And in those sorts of situations, just because I like to help out my friends in my network, we can actually go back and we can apply these after the fact, but it's much easier done when you do it right from the beginning.
So, and that is great. That's so important. The other thing, so this is so important. That's why you want to work with people who understand it. That's why you want to work with strategists, because their game is to understand the tax code. We're not just people who think about selling a product to you. We're thinking about the whole game. We spend our lives as strategists reading the tax code. That's our game. So everything we talk about, every time there's a new code that comes out there, we know the details about it. One thing that Brad was saying there, which I wanted to emphasize, is that if you got your solar panel from a company that goes out of business, you basically don't lose your tool as a solar panel. What you lose is you lose that ability, you lose that support, that after sales support that you're able to get from that company. Because you already have the tool, you already have the asset is working for you. But if there was ever any warranty related to that asset, you don't have any person to look up to because the person is gone. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. That's why it's so important to get the team right from the beginning because it's just the nature of mechanical things that they'll need tune-ups and they might have something break down. The cars have it all the time. Heavy machinery has it. Doesn't matter what it is, it'll eventually have something, which is why you need someone there that can take care of you when that happens.
Do I need to pay for, let's say I was buying a panel, which is $50,000. Do I need to pay for the money upfront? Do I need cash to pay for it?
There's a lot of different ways that you can approach that. Some states will allow you to a lease or what's called a power purchase agreement where you don't actually own the panels. I don't recommend that ever to my business owners because you don't get to capitalize on these tax incentives. The two ways that you can get it and actually capitalize on the tax incentives are by buying it cash, just paying for it, or by getting a loan. The important part is the ownership. You have to own the panels. If you don't own the panels, you can't get the tax incentives.
And this is very important because I was just speaking to another client yesterday, and he's had panels in his home for, this is a high net worth individual, but he didn't even know that because he's leasing it. And because of the lease, he doesn't take advantage of nothing. So that's very important that you clarified that. Okay, let me ask you this. And this is something that I got from a client. A client told me that, Charles, My electricity bill is not important. I only live here with my spouse and we don't spend a lot in electricity. Our energy bill is pretty low. So maybe we don't need that because of the costs that are involved. Even though we're getting the tax savings, we might not need that. What do you say to that?
To that, I say number one, if you own a business, doesn't matter what your situation is, as long as you have a roof, we're going to be able to cut your bill down significantly because you have that business. And number two, Charles, the way that the utility companies typically price their electricity is kind of by bulk purchasing. It's the same as when you go into a Costco and you can buy 5 loaves of bread for $10, so for $2 a loaf, but then you go into a Target and it's $4 for 1 loaf. It's twice as much. Electricity is the same way. The more that you buy electricity, the lower your rate gets. So if your bill is already low, what that tells me automatically is that the rate you're paying per unit of electricity is really high. So by getting the solar panels, you will actually save more as a percentage per unit of electricity than someone whose bill is $400 or $500 even, because you're paying a much higher rate than that person from the get-go.
This is important. So when I know that you get to be involved with clients, with some of the clients we have, in terms of presenting what their situation is. So what you're saying is that regardless of where you stand with respect to power, with respect to electricity, there is so much value in getting solar power. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. At the end of the day, even if your bill is like, let's say your bill is $60, $70, 20, 30 is still lower than 60, 70. And if you can save on your taxes to boot, all the better.
And there's also this one thing also that I tell people, in addition to all what Brad is just saying, one of the things that you want to consider is when you have these solar panels, they add the value of the property, don't they?
Yeah, that's right. So there was actually a study done by Forbes, the magazine, the business magazine, and what they ended up finding is that for every dollar on your electric bill that you save, you've increased your home's value by about $20. And that ends up being about a 4% increase in your home's value. As long as you do it correctly, right? That's again the importance of having a good team, because if you don't install it correctly or if it looks ugly and they did a bad job, obviously you're not going to increase your home value that much. But what they did find is it never lowers the value of your home. The worst that could happen is your home value stays the same.
Perfect. So what about this? What about the client who tells you that my roof, I may need to replace my roof? What do you do to a guy who has a roof and he's already thinking about replacing the roof? What do you guys get to do?
So that perfect. So first things first, we'll actually do an inspection of the home and of the roof and in the attic to make sure it can support a solar system. And if it can't support a solar system, we need to get that roof switched out first. The nice thing about, again, working with the specialist is that we are able to actually go in and take care of the roof for you. If you do end up going down a financing route, you can actually include the cost of the roof in the financing terms of your solar, which makes it so that instead of having to come out of pocket for your roof, paying your deductible or paying, if you don't have insurance for it, paying $10,000 to $30,000 for your roof, now you don't have to do that because it's included with the cost of the solar, and it's just maybe $5-10 more a month.
This is amazing. I mean, I think we could talk for an hour. This topic is
Yeah, we really
really,
could.
really an interesting topic because I don't know 99% of our public doesn't know what we could do with. I mean, they see a lot of things on TV, but the TV doesn't see it because they don't know what are the benefits. All they are saying is that, oh, you need power because it's going to reduce your electricity and stuff. But this is, if you look, I was doing a small game on the return on investment on placing this panel on your home, and I found out that the return on investment of placing this panel on your home is almost more than 100%. Your return on investment, it's more than 100%. And this is only over a short period. I did it over 5 years and it was more than 100%. So this tells me one thing. It tells me that when you place these things, and remember, we are currently going through that period in our lifetime where the conventional energy sources, which are depletable, are becoming a problem. So the world is looking towards renewable energy. And what the world is doing, apart from the United States, everybody is doing, they're pumping a lot of dollars into renewable energy. And anybody who's investing into renewable energy or in any shape or form is getting tremendous tax benefits, is getting all sorts of incentives to make it happen. The key is to look at that incentive program. People don't know what is written in the tax code. That is where the thing is. Whether you're working with your CPA, 99% of CPAs don't have a clue about all these credits we just talked about. So every time you go to in many cases, and this is very important, many cases it is you, the person who has installed these credits on your home, these panels on your home, who is telling your CPA that, oh, I have this thing that I did. They told me that I have this level of credit. It is you to tell the CPA instead of the CPA telling you that, oh, if you did this, you will get this. And I say this from experience. I see that all the time. Our role as a strategy firm is we spend our time reading the tax code. And that's why when we give you such things, the reason we had to allocate this whole program to this is because we know that the value that you get from installing these panels is just illimited. I mean, it's just amazing. Why? Because that's where the economy is going. We talk about the tax code every day as an incentive program. This is one of the areas where incentives are just crazy. I want to thank you today for, Brad, I want to thank you today for taking the time to come and talk to us about these things. And for those of you who are out there whose questions have not been answered, please follow us on YouTube. Please share this program. Comment below so that we can know. Ask as many questions as you can, and Brad will be available to answer them. Some of them I can, some of them, if I'm not able to answer the technical questions, Brad is here. Brad is part of the team. Brad is going to answer all those questions for you. And if you're out there as well, I want you to share this as widely as you can. Brad, what's your final word to our audience today?
The final thing that I'd say is that in my home state here in Texas, the two largest installers of solar in the state are Shell and ExxonMobil, oil and gas companies. They know where it's going. They pay people millions of dollars a year to know where things are headed. And if the oil and gas companies are the biggest installers of solar, it's clear that they understand what we're talking about right here. And we as business owners should be taking advantage of it as well.
So if anybody, any of my clients, I talk a lot about real estate, and I tell my clients all the time that, look, when you're doing all these investment into real estate, consider solar as your primary source of energy. Why? Because that is the future, and you're going to save a lot of money by installing solar on day one. You can convert that money and use it in other parts of the properties, in other parts of your business, in other parts of growing your own estate. So I want to thank all of you today. I thank you, Brad, for making the time. And if you're out there, please connect with this program. We thank you for your comments. And again, we're going to be giving giveaways going forward. So anyone, your comments are so important to us. The one who's going to give us the best comment this week is going to get $100. Looking forward to that. Thank you, and you have a blessed rest of your week. Thank you, and bye-bye. The reason I talk about finance strategy